From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
The short draw fire destroys several outbuildings and burns a home, sends one person to the hospital, and is 0% contained. We'll have full details on that southeastern Montana blaze, plus a shock to mine workers. Stillwater announced the layoffs of hundreds of mine workers at its 9 Montana mine. We'll talk to some of those families in just a few minutes. Tribal leaders call for Montana U.S. Senate Republican candidate Tim Sheehy to respond to racially insensitive comments he made after days of silence from his campaign. Good morning and welcome back to Montana This Morning on this Friday, September 13th. I'm Augusta McDonnell here with Miller Robson.
Yep, happy Friday. TGIF, everybody.
TGIF. Yeah. And what can folks expect for the weekend?
Looking pretty good. Looking good. You know, we had this low come through, gave us some rain the last couple of days. Altogether here in Billings, 4/10 of an inch of rainfall over the 2-day period. But drying out for the weekend. A really nice weekend on the way. So get out there and enjoy yourself. Yesterday, we called for a high of 68. That's exactly what we got. We got 68 degrees, so a bit below average. We're going to start to warm back up, though. We'll see some 70s and maybe even some, well, definitely by the weekend, we're going to see those 80s coming back into play. So a bit warmer, but not too bad. Yesterday, we had over 3/10 of an inch of rainfall. Again, our total for the last 2 days, 4/10 of an inch. So it's helped to make a bit of a dent for the month and for the year. We're dry moving forward all the way through Monday for the most part, but as we get into the middle part of next week, maybe another system coming through that could give us some more beneficial rain. We need it, especially for the wildfires, and also cool us down too after the warm up. 51 right now at the airport, winds out of the southwest at about 8 miles an hour across the area, 40s and 50s. A little bit of rain off to our northwest. That will continue to move to the north as that low pulls away. High pressure takes over to dry things out. We'll take a look at that. I had a question about the wildfire smoke. We'll talk about that coming up too.
Okay, yep. Air quality is still a little bit an issue.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Miller. That wildfire we were talking about earlier along the Montana-Wyoming state line exploded in size this week. It's now destroyed at least one home and several other outbuildings, though they're not entirely sure the extent of that damage right now. It's the short draw fire. It started Wednesday afternoon in Campbell County, Wyoming. That's a little bit east of where that big Remington fire started that we've been following for a couple weeks. The short draw quickly spread north into Montana. By Thursday night, it grew to more than 30,000 acres in size. Roughly 2/3 of that burn area is in Montana. Let's take a look at a map of the blaze. This is a really rural area. It's burning pretty far from any major towns, just in this remote area of the state. It's west of the small community of Biddle. That's about 40 miles south of Broadus. Again, one person did go to the hospital Wednesday night. They were treated and released with no issues. The fire is still 0% contained. The cause of this blaze is still under investigation. Q2's Matt Carmack spoke with residents in the path of this fire.
It's many home and landowners' worst nightmare, that orange sky and dark smoke from a wildfire. But unfortunately, it's what the people of Biddle, Montana are experiencing due to the short draw fire, ultimately meaning that they have to evacuate their homes and ranches.
Bayhorse Creek, Montana.
Many residents outside of Biddle, Montana are experiencing fear, anxiety, and frustrations due to Wednesday's fire, a fire which has reached over 30,000 acres and is only looking to grow.
It's been huge, and the severe winds just made it uncontrollable, and it's scary.
Dave Mader is a nearby landowner who witnessed when the fire broke out around Wednesday afternoon, ultimately crossing the Montana-Wyoming border. Although Dave has experienced a multitude of wildfires, he's more afraid of this one compared to the normal summer wildfire.
Well, absolutely, because this fire's so big, it's still an unknown even now.
Saying that it's the worst wildfire season he's ever seen after living outside of Biddle, Montana his entire life.
This is the biggest one we've had this close. Years and years ago, there was one here west of here that was close. This has been the worst fire here.
He's had a similar experience to BD Bar Range Manager Grant Desai, whose property the fire is actually on.
2 o'clock, and it just blew up from there.
As a ranch manager, he's had about 30 hours to manage both his family safety as well as his livestock.
We loaded all of our horses and took them to a friend's house in Wyoming and spent the night there, then come back today.
Neither Dave nor Grant have evacuated the area, keeping a close distance from the danger zone. As of news time Thursday night, the fire is split into 2 separate sections across Buffalo Creek, and it's only getting worse because of that heavy wind.
And the wind keeps changing direction, so the fire keeps changing, and the poor guys fighting it are just having a tough time. It's pretty tough for them.
Now residents of Biddle are trying to stay safe, hoping the fire is managed as time progresses. In Biddle, Matt Carmack, MTN News.
Mac, thank you so much. And this week we're tracking a big change in our local job market. A blow was dealt to the Stillwater County workforce on Thursday. Stillwater announced the layoffs of hundreds of mine workers at its Nye, Montana mine. Owners say the decision is necessary with the continuing plunge of palladium prices. The mine is calling the layoffs a restructuring. They're reducing the workforce from 1,700 to roughly 700. Mine officials say operations at Stillwater West will be placed on, quote, care and maintenance for now, while the CEO says the future of Stillwater remains in the balance. Employees learned their jobs were in jeopardy Thursday morning. This leaves countless families concerned about their futures.
As a family of 6, it's a huge stressor because, it's not just the 2 of us that we can worry about. We have to worry about taking the kids out of school, re-enrolling them somewhere else, basically starting over again. Financially, it's been rough. A lot of these families that work at the mine are either single income families or they live paycheck to paycheck. And so the uncertainty makes it very difficult.
Workers will stay on the job for 60 days until November 12th. The mine is the largest employer in Stillwater County, producing palladium and platinum. Montana's top political leaders are weighing in on the layoffs after hearing the news, each saying Russian imports are to blame.
It is totally unacceptable that the Stillwater mine is being forced to lay off 700 hardworking Montanans. Make no mistake, this is happening because Russia is dumping critical minerals into our American market to drive down our prices. The Biden administration needs to do more.
There is absolutely no reason the United States should be importing critical minerals we can find right here at home. Montana is rich in minerals, and we need to be supporting American mines and American jobs, not Russia's.
Montana Governor Greg Gianforte also spoke out Thursday, saying in a statement, quote, today's decision by Stillwater Mining is a significant blow to hardworking Montana miners, their families, and our communities. The state of Montana will bring to bear every available resource to help these workers and their families. We'll continue to keep an eye on what goes on up until November 12th. And in campaign news this morning, President Biden will pause Thursday to mark the 30th anniversary of the Violence Against Women's Act. The historic legislation has provided billions of dollars around the country to reduce sexual assault and other crimes facing women. Our Joe St. George takes a look at the law's legacy and the work many believe still need to happen to protect women.
2024 marks 30 years since the landmark Violence Against Women Act was signed into law, impacting the Department of Justice, state prosecutors, and law enforcement agencies around the country. 3 decades later, those who helped pass the law are proud of its legacy, but still believe more work must be done.
It has been 30 years since historic hearings.
I nearly died, and I am permanently paralyzed.
And then an unprecedented bill became law. The Violence Against Women Act instructed the Department of Justice to set up the Office on Violence Against Women, which administers funds and helps craft policies for communities around the country to reduce domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and more. Over $4 billion in taxpayer funds have been administered to communities since it became law. The White House estimates between 1993 to 2022, domestic violence rates dropped by 67%, in part because of the law.
This didn't exist before. There were no victims advocates for sexual assault. There were no special units. SVU didn't really exist.
Victoria Nurse helped write this bill as a Senate staffer working for then Senator Joe Biden at the time. She says it may sound hard to believe, but this was considered a controversial bill in the 90s, and it took years to pass. Victims had a hard time then prosecuting their abusers. Even some progressives feared too many may go to jail if the bill became law.
There was a period in which lawyers thought that you had to give psychiatric exams for victims because it was hysterical.
The abuse hotline this law created has resulted in over 7 million calls since it launched. Nurse says 30 years ago there were only 2 female senators, which is why Biden's role is considered so consequential.
He figured he only had one shot, and I frankly didn't think he was going to get it over the finish line.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers this week are marking the milestone with ideas to modernize the law.
I have been victim to non-consensual deepfake pornography.
The technology is so good that you cannot discern that these videos are not real.
The Democratic Women's Caucus hosted a bipartisan discussion on how the internet is an area where new laws are needed.
Deepfake pornography is a form of sexual violence. It's a form of digital sexual violence.
At the White House Thursday, over 1,000 sexual assault survivors and activists will gather to tell their story and honor President Biden's legacy. The White House says new grants will be announced too, including a new effort to combat cybercrimes. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
Joe, thank you so much. Back here in Montana, tribal leaders are calling for Montana U.S. Senate Republican candidate Tim Sheehy to respond to the racially insensitive comments he made last year at multiple fundraising events. These comments were published a couple weeks ago in a tribal paper on the Salish Kootenai Reservation. Tribal members then came together Thursday this week, meeting on Sacrifice Cliff to address Sheehy's failure since then to explain them or show remorse for those comments. In recorded audio that happened during a campaign event last fall, Sheehy made comments referencing his time on the Crow Reservation, saying, quote, "It's a great way to bond with all the Indians being out there while they're drunk at 8 a.m. Bryce Kirk, the Rocky Mountain Tribal Leaders Chairman, calls what Sheehy said defamatory.
It's serious. As he comes out and continues to not want to say I'm sorry for something so serious, it really bothers me personally. Just for the fact that he thinks that it's okay to sit with people behind closed doors and defame a lot of people and sit there and think they know who we are, but that's not who we are.
Tribal leaders say if Sheehy doesn't respond with a public apology, they vow to make this a, quote, learning opportunity.
Pursue any and all options. Once again, we take no delight in educating Mr. Sheehy. But you should not ignore the indigenous people of the state who are so critical to its history.
Montana is home to 12 tribes and 7 reservations. Leaders say these stereotypes have hurt many. Right now, national political forecasters say Sheehy is narrowly favored over Democratic U.S. Senator Jon Tester in a race that could determine which party controls the Senate next year in Congress. On Thursday, the Cook Political Reporting shifted its rating from toss-up to lean Republican, while the newsletter Inside Elections did the same. These decisions come after several recent polls show Sheehy with a mid-single-digit lead over Tester. Forecasters warn the race is not over and that Tester has survived tough elections before, but a decline in ticket splitting is making it harder than ever. That means voters are more polarized. If Sheehy does defeat Tester, Republicans will be overwhelmingly favored to take control of the Senate. And flu season will soon be upon us, with cases expected to pick up in October. One Billings doctor is advocating for early vaccinations this year for both flu and COVID-19. Dr. Neil Koo at Billings Clinic says now in September is the best time to start getting your shots. It can take 2 weeks for full effectiveness and offer 5 to 6 months of protection. Getting shots now can help you be at full effectiveness when peak flu season hits.
The reason we put on our seatbelt when we get in the car and drive is because we can't predict when we're going to get in a car accident. We don't tell people you put on your seatbelt right before the accident because you can't predict it. So it's the same thing.
Koo says the important part is to get vaccinated whenever you can.